The Hawks go to war. Let's play hardball. Good evening, I'm Chris Matthews up in New York, and let me start tonight with this roaring battle between Dick Cheney and Rand Paul. The stakes couldn't be fatter. Was it right to fight the Iraq War? Was it good for the United States and mankind to ignite a war in the Mideast that cost the lives of 186,000 people, that ridded Iran of its #1 Arab rival, that basically turned Iraq into an Iranian client? Was this really good for us or our friend Israel? Well, Dick and Liz Cheney believe the whole war, including the torture, was exactly the right way to go. Rand Paul, the frontrunner for 2016, thinks and says just the opposite, and it's getting personal. Liz Cheney has just accused Senator Paul of getting his point of view, in fact, his talking point, she said, from our own MSNBC's Rachel Maddow. So let's get this straight. If you think the Iraq War was fought under false pretenses, if you think the whole push for war was undermined by not just bad intel, but by a misconceived policy agenda, then you, sir, must be a progressive. That's hardly true, of course. Ask the country, ask Republicans if they think sending our people into Iraq accomplished anything good for this country. Just ask them. There's only one part of this country where the answer is yes. It's in that pocket of right-wing hawkish ideology that will not let the facts of history get in the way of its obsession with oil, blood, and taking down anyone at home or abroad who dares to thumb its nose at the 4 times draft-deferred Dick Cheney, the armchair hawk who prefers fighting his wars from the avuncular ease of a Sunday morning talk show. The big news which drives Cheney nuts is the arrival of a top Republican, Senator Rand Paul, willing to say that the country's #1 hawk has no claws. Dana Milbank is political columnist for the Washington Post. Joan Walsh is an MSNBC political analyst and editor-at-large for Salon. By the way, Rand Paul's strategic bombing of Dick Cheney in 2009, just before Paul announced his plans for the United States Senate, is worth another look today as we assess the shortage of voices today defending Cheney or denouncing Rand Paul. Let's watch.
There's a great YouTube of Dick Cheney in 1995 defending Bush #1, and he goes on for about 5 minutes. He's being interviewed, I think, by the American Enterprise Institute, and he says it would be a disaster, it'd be vastly expensive, it'd be a civil war, we'd have no exit strategy. He goes on and on for 5 minutes. Dick Cheney said it would be a bad idea, and that's why the first Bush didn't go into Baghdad. Dick Cheney then goes to work for Halliburton, makes hundreds of millions of dollars as their CEO. Next thing you know, he's back in government. It's a good idea to go into Iraq.
So Cheney was looking out for Halliburton. Anyway, Jennifer Rubin, hawkish opinion writer for the Washington Post today, published reaction from Liz Cheney, that's the daughter of Dick Cheney, who said it's not surprising since Senator Paul often seems to get his foreign policy talking points from Rachel Maddow. And John Bolton, Fox News Channel contributor and former UN ambassador, emailed Rubin, quote, Senator Paul should repudiate his remarks and apologize to Vice President Cheney. Joan Walsh, I have to tell you, I love this. I love the fact that the Republican Party is finally coming to some kind of reckoning over the disastrous course that took us into Iraq. In its own midst, it's fighting about it.
Well, and they are going to bludgeon Rand Paul. I mean, I don't know who wins. I'm slightly surprised that he hasn't tried to walk back these comments at all. It's very hard to know who to root for here because there's no evidence. I mean, you were very clear about this last night. He did not provide evidence of this Halliburton connection, but he's absolutely right that Dick Cheney is the man in charge who is fighting for his wealthy friends and who fought this war under vastly false pretext. So he's going at him, and it seems like everybody's standing around waiting to see who does what next. I mean, linking him to Rachel Maddow, that would be high praise if somebody said it about me, but it's really kind of dirty on the part of Liz Cheney. She's a progressive. She's also a woman. It's one of those classy Cheney digs that Rand Paul better get used to, and it'll be interesting to see how he fights back.
Well, they're accusing Rand Paul of speaking with excellent English, at least. That must be the implication.
She's brilliant.
Let me go to Dana. Dana, I think that what I'm looking for, perhaps more than Joan is, I'm looking for a deep intramural struggle on the American right, not in the center, or on the left, or the progressive left. I'm looking for a real fight here because I think Rand Paul is on to something. I think he thinks it's pay dirt here to say that war was a disaster. And then he's willing to take that to the Republican heartland in Iowa and the caucuses and even up to New Hampshire. I don't think you'd want to be on the side of, my God, that was a good national campaign that killed 186,000 people, including thousands of our own service people. How do you win that argument from the hawkish side?
Yeah, look, I mean, Rand Paul's timing couldn't be better, perhaps by accident, but it really couldn't be better. The isolationist, interventionist strains have been dueling within the Republican Party going back to Robert Taft and before that. But this may be the isolationist moment. In a way, of course, Rand Paul's in politics because his father's Ron Paul, but really Rand Paul was created by Dick Cheney. It was the Cheney-driven, the Bush-Cheney administration's wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that created this new isolationist tendency in America. There is now a majority of both, according to a December Pew Research poll, a majority of both Republicans and Americans overall now think America should mind its own business. That's a direct reaction to the Iraq and Afghanistan wars.
And Dana, you think that reflects Republican, generally mainstream Republican opinion as well?
Well, it reflects mainstream Republican opinion. The neocons are in retreat. But if you look in the Senate, for example, Rand Paul is in a small minority. If you look at the Republican candidates for 2016, Rand Paul is the only guy out there. That's why he has the whole field to himself here, while the others carve themselves up.
You know, when I read your piece about that, your thoughts about that today, I was thinking back, and it's a very different situation. Remember Jimmy Carter ran in 76 and 75, 76 as the only sort of moderate Democrat against 4 or 5 liberals. The shape of the field, as they say in Massachusetts, defines the victor. If you're the only one in your corner and everybody else is carving up the cake in another direction, you can skip by everybody. Joan, I want to talk to you about this, the Cheneys right now. I think that the Cheney family, and that's how you pronounce their name if you listen to them, the Cheney family's out to save its reputation. They got maybe 1 or 2 more Republican conventions they can attend and be the stars at. I think the man we're looking at there wants to be the eminence grise of the Republican Party. He wants to walk into that convention. It's probably going to be in Vegas, but he wants to walk into that convention and get a big ovation, standing O, as the great godfather of the Republican Party. And the fact that Rand Paul has dared to call him out and say, oh, no, you're the guy we ought to be hiding in the closet somewhere, is really bugging him and his family. Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, they're not going to let this rest. They're going to keep going at him, and we'll see what he comes back with. You know, I agree with you that fundamentally within the Republican Party, within the base, within rank-and-file real Republicans, like a lot of my relatives, that war is hugely unpopular. Dick Cheney is hugely unpopular. But I think it's worth noting that you're right, Rand Paul only he's got this field to himself. I mean, you had some governors who traipsed off and kissed the ring. Oh, what jokes they were! You traipsed off and kissed the ring of Sheldon Adelman.
That kissing booth should be on every Democratic ad. Just show this is the Republican Party,
and he exists, and his people, the Republican Jewish Coalition, exists to wipe out Rand Paul. So the fact that you had Scott Walker with no foreign policy history, John Kasich, Jeb Bush is less surprising, and Chris Christie traipse over there shows Rand Paul really might have this entire terrain to himself, which will be a very interesting thing to watch.
You know, it always seems to me that people that don't have much going on in their heads about foreign policy have to go in the very far extremes.
They've got to go full neocon.
To prove that they're somehow intellectual in the Republic. The Democrats, the Hollywood people sometimes do this too. Anyway, Dick Cheney spoke at AU, that's American University in Washington, in late March, that's recently, was interviewed for the school's TV station where he was again unequivocal that the CIA's torture program, or as he called it, the enhanced interrogation program, was a huge success. Here's Dick Cheney defending torture.
I was a strong advocate and helped put together the enhanced interrogation program. Some people call it torture. It wasn't torture. We were very careful in all respects to abide by the law. We got legal opinions out of the Justice Department with respect to what we could do and what we couldn't do. This notion that somehow there was torture involved, that's not true. It's a name that, a term that the critics have used in order to try to discredit the program. But the fact is those 2 programs, as much as anything else, kept us safe for 7.5 years. And the fact that we defeated all follow-on attempts at a major attack on the United States speaks for itself and worked.
You listen to the logic there. It forced people to tell the truth they wouldn't otherwise tell because we did some things to them that made them tell the truth. First of all, none of it's true. None of it's true. It didn't work. It didn't achieve any truths. But Cheney has a certain look in his face, a certain grin he gets, a certain grinding of the teeth you see in his face about, it was all legal. We were able to do that. Anyway, contrast Cheney's certitude with the Washington Post report on what the Senate Intelligence Committee, by the way, bipartisan committee report, it reports about the current and U.S. officials with knowledge of the report have to say about it. Quote, the CIA misled the government and the public about the torture program. 2, it concealed details about the severity of the methods used. 3, it overstated the significance of plots and the prisoners involved. And 4th, and this is important, took credit for critical pieces of intelligence the detainees had given up before they were tortured. Joan? I guess the ends would justify the means if you were a certain kind of person. But there were no ends here. There was no gratification except in that face of Cheney, who seems to enjoy this whole conversation. Your thoughts?
It was torture, it was illegal, and it didn't work. That's 3 for 3. You know, he's wrong about everything. This report will eventually come out, and he would be shamed if he were a normal person and capable of feeling shame. But this is going to be yet another black eye for his legacy. But he and his daughter are going to keep on swinging at the opponent, at their opponents, and you know they're not winning, Chris. I think public opinion is turning against them. But he's going to leave this earth insisting that he did the right thing.
Dana, it seems the most important message he wants to get across is to dare to speak against torture, to dare to speak against the Iraq War is heretical by Republicans, and the way you destroy them is to accuse them of being somebody on the other side, in this case Rachel Maddow, but it also demonstrates the hatred factor of Cheney and their family. They can't stand people who disagree with them. Last thought from you.
It is very personal. I love the way that he justifies the torture program by saying the Justice Department approved of it. His Justice Department, where he appointed his own lawyers to. So look, this has always been the Cheney MO to say, I am right, never admit you're wrong, never admit failure. It's a sign of weakness. What's happening, though, is people are turning against him. Yeah, he's still got his daughter, he's still got John Bolton, he's still got Michael Hayden. It's like, you know, family, friends, and relatives at this point. But you even see the Republicans on the Senate Intelligence Committees turning against the Bush-Cheney way of thinking and saying, let's declassify that report, let's get it out. And that's more of this movement of the neocon sort of going to ground and the Rand Paul movement ascendant.
Well, it reminds me of that early Superman movie where Eva Marie Saint, who was Superman's mom, and of course Marlon Brando, setting as Krypton's about to blow up, they send the little kid off in a spacecraft to save him. Riding in that spacecraft is Liz Cheney. Thank you so much, Dana Milbank and Joe Walsh. Coming up.